Hi, I'm Maris. They said I should enter through the staff door at my own brother's wedding. I smiled, walked in, and let them believe I didn't belong. But what they didn't know was the venue, the walls they whispered in, the chandeliers they danced under. I owned all of it. And when the truth came out, they weren't just exposed, they begged, on their knees, in front of everyone. But tell me, how do you forgive people who spent years rewriting your worth? Before we dive in, where are you listening from right now? Drop it in the comments and stay with me. Because this story, it gets colder. Tower. I parked 3 rows from the front, though I could have pulled into the reserved spaces near the entrance. I owned the place, after all. Every marble tile, every chandelier dangling inside that glass building, they had my name on the contract. But I didn't come here to make a point. I came here to watch my brother get married, quietly, like a shadow at the edge of the frame. The late afternoon sun reflected off the venue's tall windows, casting streaks of gold on the pavement. I sat still for a moment in the driver's seat, fingers resting on the soft fabric of a modest gift bag. No ribbon, no card, just a plain white bag with a small velvet box inside. I reached for my wrist, feeling the smooth curve of the silver thread bracelet. A quiet breath, a small reminder, stay calm. Don't give them a reason to say you ruined anything. I stepped out, heels clicking softly against the pavement. The breeze in Houston still carried the heavy air of early evening, thick and a little sticky. I smoothed my dress, nothing flashy, just navy blue and knee-length. Classic, clean, forgettable, just how they liked me. The double glass doors glimmered ahead. Inside, a blur of well-dressed guests milled around beneath vaulted ceilings. I saw floral arrangements towering like sculptures, the kind of excess Eloan loved. And then, there she was. Across the lobby, just past the host podium, Eloan turned her head slightly and locked eyes with me. That half-smile she gave wasn't warm. It was polished, practiced, a politician's smirk, and then, barely noticeable, she tilted her head and nodded toward the man standing by the front entrance. He moved. As I approached, the security guard, a tall man with a buzz cut and a stiff jawline, stepped forward to block my path. "Ma'am," he said, holding one palm out. "Event support staff need to go through the service hallway. We've been asked to direct accordingly." I blinked. "I'm sorry?" He cleared his throat, gaze shifting just past me. "You've been marked as part of the support team. They're using the east hallway entrance." I looked over his shoulder. Eloan had already turned away, pretending to fix a crooked vase of roses. "Who told you I was staff?" I asked quietly. He didn't answer, just motioned to the side, where a narrow, unlit hallway curved behind the building. I could feel heat rising in my chest, not from the sun. The message was loud, clear, and cruel. "You're not part of us. Use the back door." I glanced once more toward the lobby, toward the guests laughing and sipping champagne. My brother wasn't visible. Not that it mattered. He never saw anything anyway. My hand touched the bracelet again. A reflex. I'd been told all my life to keep the peace, to be the bigger person. If I protested now, I'd be labeled difficult, emotional, too sensitive, just like always. So I said nothing. I turned slowly, walked to the side of the building where a dented metal door stood slightly ajar. As it creaked open, the smell hit first. Cleaning supplies, steamed vegetables, fryer oil. Harsh, honest smells. The opposite of whatever perfume hung in the main hall. The hallway floor was cold tile. The light buzzed above me, flickering at the edges. Staff hurried past, balancing trays of hors d'oeuvres and crates of glasses. None of them noticed me, except one younger server who slowed and asked, "Are you the extra help for the reception?" I shook my head. "Just passing through." She tilted her head in confusion, then nodded with a small, apologetic smile. That's when I knew. This wasn't a mistake. Someone had told them I was with the staff. Of course it was Elowen. She was always careful, never overt, never loud. Always the type to cut you down with kindness and smile for the camera while doing it. And Callan? He probably knew. Or worse, didn't care. It would have been easier for him to let her handle that issue anyway. As I continued down the hallway, voices echoed, kitchen staff muttering about the bride's family being pushy, a floral assistant cursing under her breath about last-minute table changes. I absorbed everything. I always did. The lights shifted as I neared the ballroom access. My footsteps slowed. I wasn't sure what I expected, but I knew what was waiting. Glitter, glamour, and 100 strangers who didn't know or care how I got there. I emerged from the hallway into the back of the event space. It was stunning. Golden light draped over the tables like melted honey. The guests sparkled in designer gowns and pressed suits. And there I stood, on the far side of the room, framed by swinging kitchen doors, holding a plain white gift bag. 2 guests looked over their shoulders and then quickly away. One man leaned toward a woman beside him and whispered something. She glanced my way, then down at my shoes. Someone waved, then paused, probably realizing I wasn't who they thought I was. I spotted Callan near the head table, mid-laugh, his hand resting lightly on Elowen's back. He looked carefree, proud. He didn't see me. Of course he didn't. He never does. I walked slowly along the edge of the crowd, passing servers with champagne flutes. No one stopped me. No one greeted me. It was like I didn't exist, just another piece of the machinery moving the night along. I found an empty seat near the back, half-shadowed by a pillar. The music pulsed gently under the chatter. Laughter floated from the front. I sat, straightened my bracelet, let out a breath so slow it didn't even stir the napkin in front of me. They wanted me invisible. Fine. Let them pretend I wasn't there. But I was, and I was watching. As I sat there trying to steady my breathing, I heard my name being mentioned across the room in a way that made my heart stop. I didn't move at first, just listened. She should be grateful she was even invited, a woman said, her voice crisp like a dry leaf cracking underfoot. Honestly, I wouldn't have bothered. Maris, right? Another voice chimed in, with mock confusion. Callan's sister? Elowen told me she's always been difficult. I turned my head ever so slightly. 2 women stood near the rose-laced column just behind me, Leora and Renna, both from Elowen's side, dressed like they'd stepped out of a catalog shoot for second-tier wine heiresses. Too polished, too rehearsed. I mean, Elowen said she causes scenes just to get attention, Renna added, stirring her drink like she was mixing truth into rumor. She's barely family. That one landed harder than I expected, not because it was new, but because it was said loud enough to make sure I heard it. There was no shame in their performance. In fact, I realized with a bitter sort of clarity, they weren't gossiping. They were reciting. This was a script. Elowen had been preparing this narrative for months, maybe longer. The idea that I was dramatic, hard to deal with, cold, problematic. The more they believed it, the less anyone would question what she did to me. Clever, cowardly, cruel. I looked down at the bracelet around my wrist again. I wasn't reaching for comfort this time. I was grounding myself so I wouldn't get up and say something I'd regret. I let the words settle like dust around me. I didn't flinch, didn't breathe too loud, but inside something was moving, shifting. I thought back to the way Elowen used to speak to me when Callan wasn't in the room. It was never yelling, never direct. She sliced with compliments and warnings, dressed up as concern. You know, you don't smile much in family photos, Maris. People notice that. Don't take it the wrong way, but you might come off a little intimidating. It makes it hard for people to approach you. Callan's career is really taking off. Maybe lay low for a while, give him some space to shine. She always wrapped her digs in silk, and I swallowed them like I was trained to. I blinked back to the present as a waiter approached. A young man, maybe early 20s, neat black vest, a little too nervous to be here. He stopped in front of me holding a tray with only a glass of water left. "Miss Calder?" he said quietly. I nodded, surprised anyone here still remembered my name properly. He glanced around, then leaned down a bit and offered the glass. I'm sorry you had to come through the back," he whispered. "The bride told us not to let you use the front entrance. Said to keep you out of the way." He straightened up instantly, eyes wide, like he'd realized he shouldn't have said that. "Sorry, that probably wasn't appropriate. Never mind." He rushed off before I could respond. My fingers tightened around the glass. It wasn't just a social misstep or a miscommunication. It was deliberate, every piece of it, crafted like the wedding centerpieces, arranged for maximum effect. The humiliation wasn't accidental, it was the point. And the worst part? It was working. I stayed still a few more seconds, then slowly looked around the room. Eloin's family clustered together near the champagne wall, basking in their curated elegance. Callan flitted between them like a nervous host at a charity gala, eager to impress. My parents, Corinne and Darren, stood near the Mercers, laughing louder than necessary, clinking glasses as if they'd already traded one daughter for another. Not once had they looked toward the back of the room. Not once had they come searching for me. I thought about birthdays growing up, the ones where my cake was late or forgotten, where I ended up cutting it myself while Mom helped Callan rehearse a school speech, where I was asked to help at my own party instead of blowing out candles. It was always like that. I was expected to manage, to understand, to not make things harder for anyone else. I was always good at shrinking, not today. My breath deepened, steady. My shoulders pulled back. I reached for the bracelet again, but this time not to soothe. This time it was a choice. I'm not shrinking today, I thought. Not anymore. Still, I didn't storm the head table or make a speech. I wasn't here for theatrics. I stood up slowly, walked toward the edge of the main crowd, not into it, just near enough to observe. People moved in practiced choreography, bridesmaids fluffing gowns, groomsmen straightening ties, guests pretending their drinks were more interesting than anything else happening. I stayed silent, listening, watching. I passed by my parents as they spoke with Sable Mercer, Eloin's aunt, the one who always seemed to be giving someone a second-hand compliment. Corinne turned her head and did a tiny double take, as if unsure who I was. "Oh," she said flatly, "you made it." No hug, no warmth. Just surprise that I hadn't stayed hidden like they'd hoped. Then she turned back to her conversation, leaving me there with the back of her shoulder. My father gave a slight nod, nothing more. Across the room, Eloin watched. She didn't smile. She didn't need to. She'd already won the first round, but I didn't sit back down. I stayed standing. If they wanted me invisible, they were going to have to look harder. Because I was done pretending I didn't see what they were doing, and I wasn't walking away. The cocktail hour began to shift into staging for the ceremony. Lights dimmed slightly, music softened. Guests began to drift toward the main hall. I stood near a decorative archway wrapped in artificial white orchids. That's when I heard Eloin again, her voice low but clear as she leaned toward a bridesmaid near the entryway. "Just make sure she doesn't interfere," she said. "Tonight is about family, real family." It was meant to cut, and it did, but it didn't break me, not this time. If they want to erase me, I whispered to myself, they'll have to do better than this. I pressed my fingers once more against the bracelet, and I stayed. I wasn't leaving. Not yet. He moved with that confident stride people wear when they believe they know everything. Rowan Slate, Elowen's cousin. I hadn't seen him in nearly a decade, and yet here he was, right on cue, like a ghost summoned by my discomfort. "You look, well, Maris, surprising, given everything." His voice dripped with something slick and sour, like he'd rehearsed this in front of a mirror. I didn't smile. "Everything?" He tilted his head with mock concern. "Alawen told us about the incident. I didn't think you'd actually show your face tonight." My stomach clenched. What incident? Rowan leaned in, a little too close for comfort, his breath hinting at scotch and self-importance. "You know, the dinner, the family disaster. Elowen said it was a whole ordeal, said you made a scene, refused to apologize, embarrassed everyone. It's been a thing." My throat felt like it was closing, but my face didn't flinch. Of course she'd rewrite history. Of course she'd drip-feed it through her people, giving them just enough poison to keep me isolated. "She said we should be prepared, just in case you ruin the wedding the way you ruined that anniversary dinner," Rowan added with a half shrug, like he wasn't dropping dynamite at my feet. The truth hit me with the weight of a memory I'd buried under layers of tolerance. That dinner, I had gone to Callan quietly, trying to help him. His girlfriend at the time, before Elowen, was sneaking money off his card, bad-mouthing him to mutual friends. I had the texts, the receipts. I told him discreetly, sat beside him at the table, whispered that I had something to show him after dessert. I never raised my voice, never made a scene. But Callan did. He cut me off mid-sentence and said, loudly enough for others to turn their heads, "You're always trying to sabotage my relationships, Maris. Maybe if you weren't so lonely, you'd understand what it's like to trust someone." That night, our parents asked me to apologize, to keep the peace. I did, not because I was wrong, but because I was always expected to bend. That was the last time I tried to protect him from himself. Snapping back to the present, I stared at Rowan. He looked proud of himself, like he'd delivered a public service. "Elowen just wants tonight to go smoothly," he added, his tone sliding into something patronizing. "So maybe try not to draw attention, stick to the sides, you know?" I took a slow breath, not out of submission, out of control. "Thanks for the advice," I said, and turned away from him. My heels clicked softly down the corridor, leading toward the ceremony hall. The hallway smelled like roses and floor polish. The soft jazz from the cocktail hour faded behind me, replaced by a kind of humming tension I couldn't name. With each step, my thoughts unraveled. Stick to the sides. Don't make waves. Be grateful you were invited. They all carried the same message, just dressed in different outfits. Be small. I touched the silver thread bracelet at my wrist again, my own quiet anchor, and let the years stack up behind my ribs. The apologies I made, the things I swallowed, the names they whispered when they thought I couldn't hear. At the end of the hallway, I paused beneath a gold archway laced with ivy. Just ahead, the ceremony space glittered, guests slowly drifting toward their seats. The scent of gardenia floated around me, too sweet to enjoy. Behind a thin floral divider, I caught voices. 2 staff members, their backs turned to me. "The bride said her sister's a little fragile," one of them murmured. "Yeah, we're supposed to keep an eye on her, just in case she interrupts." Fragile. That word hit me harder than I expected. Not angry, not difficult. Fragile. It was worse. It painted me as broken, as something delicate that needed containment. It stripped me of power while pretending to offer concern. I clenched my jaw. My pulse thudded in my ears. "This ends today," I whispered. I walked into the ceremony hall without waiting for anyone to tell me where to go. I didn't check if I belonged. I chose a seat at the aisle's edge, in full view, not hidden. I sat tall. The chandeliers above glowed like constellations. Rows of chairs lined in symmetrical perfection. Callan stood near the altar, fiddling with his cufflink. Alawan floated around him like a curated dream. They built their version of me for years. Tonight, they'll see the real one. I lifted my chin and kept my eyes steady on the front of the ceremony hall. A soft murmur rolled through the guests as more people found their seats. Light flickered across polished wood floors, and amber-colored linens draped over the aisle chairs. It would have been beautiful if the rot beneath it wasn't so fresh in my chest. Then, from across the room, Callan saw me. His face, relaxed just a minute ago while chatting with Elowen's uncle, shifted. It wasn't just annoyance that flickered across his features. It was something colder, apprehension, the kind of dread you feel when something threatens the image you've worked too hard to protect. He excused himself and moved toward me, his steps too careful to be casual. I watched him come, but I didn't stand. He used to walk toward me with questions, with trust. Now he only comes when she sends him. Callan slid into the seat beside mine, leaned slightly in, and kept his voice low. "Alawan said you're upset," he started, eyes fixed ahead, like he couldn't bear to meet mine. "I just need you to keep things calm, Maris. Please, don't make tonight harder." The phrasing struck me like ice. Word for word, almost, what Rowan had parroted earlier. I blinked slowly. "She sent you, didn't she?" I asked, my voice quiet but razor sharp. He finally looked at me. "What? No, Maris, I'm just trying to avoid a scene," I finished for him. He hesitated. "I know you don't like Alawan, but she's trying. She wants tonight to be peaceful." I let out a breath, controlled but pointed. "What exactly have I done, Callan? That wasn't peaceful." He opened his mouth, closed it, then finally muttered, "Just stay low profile, for once." That hit harder than I expected. Low profile. Like I was a fire hazard in heels. He wasn't asking me anything. He was repeating a script, Alawan's script. He didn't want truth, he wanted compliance. I turned to face him fully, brushing an invisible wrinkle off my dress like I was shaking dust off something buried. "I'm here to attend your wedding," I said evenly. "Not to play the role she wrote for me." He flinched, just barely. "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means stop assuming I'm the problem." He didn't reply, just stared like he didn't recognize me. We were interrupted before the silence grew too loud. A woman in a navy clipboard blazer walked up to Callan, ignoring me entirely. "Hi, sorry. Quick note from Alawan. She's asked that we seat your sister in the back row near the photography setup, just for space." Callan didn't look at me. He just nodded. That nod felt like a hammer blow to my chest. I didn't argue, didn't make a fuss. I followed the woman as she led me toward the farthest edge of the room, behind the last grouping of guests, where folding chairs waited like forgotten furniture. Cables snaked along the floor. Lights buzzed softly from camera rigs. No flowers here, no elegance, just utility. I took my seat slowly, aware of every glance that slid my way. Some pity, some curiosity, some silent judgment wrapped in fake smiles. I sat still, and as the room bustled with anticipation and soft music, my mind drifted, not far, just far enough to remember. I remembered Christmases where I was asked to let the guests eat first, birthday parties where I handed out cake but never had a candle to blow, Thanksgiving dinners where my seat was wherever there's space. They never grew out of it. They just got better at disguising it. I touched the bracelet at my wrist again, my fingers lingering on the thread. It didn't feel like comfort anymore. It felt like an anchor holding me steady in a tide I no longer wanted to drown in. I looked up. From across the room, Elowen glided in, hair perfect, dress immaculate, smile choreographed. She floated through conversations, kissed cheeks, posed for impromptu photos. And then, just for a heartbeat, she looked at me. Not with hatred, not even with annoyance, with triumph. A small, smug smile, so slight, no one else would catch it. But I did, and in that second, I knew this wasn't about stress, or misunderstandings, or family tension. This was intentional. She wanted me boxed up, muted, erased. And Callan, he let her. My shoulders squared. I sat up straighter. I tucked a strand of hair behind my ear and folded my hands in my lap with slow precision. You can bury me in the back row, I thought, but you forgot who owns the building. I didn't move. I didn't smile. I just sat there as if the chair was meant for me. And somehow, in that moment, it was. That little seat, shoved against cables and camera bags, became the one place where I could finally see everyone for who they were. And they had no idea I'd been watching. Then, out of the corner of my eye, I noticed movement. A young man in a black vest with an event coordinator badge heading straight toward me. His face was pale, eyes flicking left and right, like he was afraid someone might stop him. He crouched beside my chair, almost kneeling. His voice was a whisper. "Ma'am, I probably shouldn't say this, but I thought you should know. The bride called earlier today about you." My breath caught. I stared at him, unblinking. "She told us," he continued, "not to give you access to certain areas. Said you might disrupt things." I swallowed. It was the first real proof I'd had all day. Not just suspicion, not just a feeling. This wasn't damage control. It wasn't nerves. She planned this. I finally found my voice. It came out low, calm, but sharp enough to cut through the buzz of the lights overhead. "And did she explain why I'd want to do that?" He hesitated. That alone told me everything. "She said you've had episodes," he murmured, "during family events." That word, episodes, like I was a walking liability, a box to be handled with caution tape. I turned my head away, blinking fast. I felt it again, that familiar, acidic blend of humiliation and helplessness. The kind of humiliation that you don't earn, but get assigned by people who'd rather control the story than face the truth. She didn't just want to keep me away, she wanted a record of me being unstable, a story they could use again. He stood up, ready to walk off, but paused. "One more thing," he added, still in that hushed, shaky tone. "The rehearsal schedule, it was moved, and you weren't told." I looked up, narrowing my eyes. "What do you mean I wasn't told?" "They did the family walkthrough an hour ago," he said. "Elowen asked us not to notify you, said it might upset you." And just like that, I saw them all in my mind. My brother, Elowen, my parents, all smiling, all laughing, moving in sync through the ceremony rehearsal like I didn't even exist. My chest tightened. My breath went shallow. I didn't even get the chance to be there. They rehearsed without me. On purpose. Golden lights still glowed softly overhead. Music still drifted through the hall. People still chatted in low, cheerful tones. But none of it reached me. I stood, slow and quiet, and walked away from the main room. I didn't want anyone to see my face. Not now. The corridor was empty, dim, and mercifully quiet. I found a wall and leaned against it. My reflection stared back from a darkened glass window, unrecognizable. "Why?" I whispered. "Am I always the one they decide is too much?" My voice cracked. I pressed my palm against the cold wall. I remembered birthdays where I wasn't in the group photos, vacations where my name had been accidentally left off the list. All those times they said, it must have been a mix-up. All the gaslighting I swallowed just to keep things smooth. It had never stopped. They hadn't grown out of it. They had just gotten better at doing it without leaving fingerprints. Voices floated from around the corner, 2 bridesmaids. I heard the groom's sister is, unpredictable. She always wants the spotlight. Allowance said she might try something tonight. They weren't whispering. They didn't have to. I was already defined in their minds, and all of it had been fed to them by Elowen before I'd even shown up. This was no accident. This was a smear campaign years in the making. Back in the hall, a staff member clapped gently to get the room's attention. All members of the wedding party, please proceed to the rehearsal dinner in the private dining wing. Chairs scraped. Laughter rose. People gathered their coats and began filing out. I took 1 step forward, only to be stopped by a different event assistant, a woman this time, smiling but stiff. "I'm sorry, ma'am," she said politely. "This dinner is for the wedding party only." I smiled back, thin and tight. "I'm the groom's sister." She glanced at the tablet in her hand, then frowned. "There's no designation for you here." I looked at the screen, not that it mattered. My name wasn't there. She added gently, "It says immediate family only." They erased me. They had wiped me off the list. Not forgotten. Removed. I didn't argue. I didn't make a scene. I just turned around, walked slowly back into the now empty ceremony hall, and sat alone among the vacant chairs. I stared down the aisle where I was supposed to have stood earlier. Some kind of family honor, a symbolic place in the ritual. That path now belonged entirely to them. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This wasn't an oversight. This wasn't wedding stress. This was a strategy. I looked around, rows of soft gold chairs, untouched centerpieces, perfect decor. But everything felt artificial now, like I'd stumbled onto a movie set where I was never meant to see the cameras. I reached for my wrist and ran my fingers over the bracelet. I remembered the day I bought it, a small shop in Portland, years ago. I liked the way the silver thread looped in on itself, like a quiet promise, you are still here. And now, more than ever, I needed that reminder. "I've been erased before," I whispered into the empty room. "But this time, I know what to do about it." I stood from the chair and started walking slowly toward the lobby, not because I had somewhere to be, but because sitting still was no longer an option. The weight of it all, years of being dismissed, reworded, silenced, pressed against my chest, but it wasn't crushing me anymore. It was reshaping me. I had just stepped past the double doors into the corridor leading back toward the reception area when I heard it, my name. Loud, sharp, not a greeting, an accusation. "Maris!" I stopped. Not because I was startled, because I recognized the tone. I turned my head slowly. Near the entrance to the lobby stood 4 of them. Varel, Elowen's mother, upright and tight-lipped. Deanna, her sister, arms folded and mouth twitching with judgment. And 2 of the cousins, barely old enough to vote but already fluent in the language of family sabotage. "There she is," one of the cousins said, pointing. "Sneaking around again." My pulse spiked. Guests nearby turned toward me. Their chatter dimmed. Some eyebrows rose, some eyes narrowed. I hadn't even said a word. Varel took 2 steps forward, hands folded in front of her chest, like she was about to lead a prayer circle. Her voice rang out, full of condescension, and just enough theatrical concern to seem gracious. "I thought we asked you to respect boundaries tonight," she said, loud enough for everyone within 20 feet to hear. I held my ground. "I haven't done anything. I was heading out." Deanna clicked her tongue and rolled her eyes like I was a student caught cheating on a test. "Then why were you standing in the hallway? Were you listening? Looking for something to ruin?" I opened my mouth, but my first word was cut off. They didn't want a conversation. They wanted a scene. and they were building it. People began drifting closer, drinks in hand, casual smiles slowly replaced by curiosity, maybe even hunger for whatever spectacle they were being offered. Callan appeared from the side, cutting through the cluster of bodies. I felt it, a stupid, instinctive flicker of hope. But one look at his face and I knew better. He looked exhausted, annoyed, like someone just told him his car got towed, not like someone watching his sister being cornered in public. "What's going on?" he asked, frowning, voice tight. Varel reached for his arm. "She's causing scenes, Callan. We've tried to be patient. We really have." I turned to him. "That's not true. I haven't done—" He raised a hand, not to calm me, but to stop me. "Maris," he said. No warmth, no question, just my name, sharp-edged. I looked at him and realized I didn't recognize him anymore. His next words came without pause. "You always do this. You always make everything about you. You ruin every family event we've ever had." The room stilled. Even the staff seemed to freeze in place. That sentence cracked through me like ice down the spine. I heard someone murmur, "Oh, wow!" Another voice, low and drawn out. "Yikes!" I couldn't breathe. I thought of birthdays where I spent half the time hiding in the bathroom, of Thanksgivings where I was asked to serve but never sit, of the years I told myself they didn't mean it, that they were just overwhelmed, distracted, tired. But now, in the middle of a wedding weekend, under soft chandeliers and watchful eyes, my brother had made it clear. Not once has he defended me. Not once. And I kept hoping he would. Behind him, Elowen appeared like a ghost stepping into her spotlight. She rested a hand on his back, her fingers delicate, her smile soft. "She must be jealous, Callan," she said, just loud enough. "She probably just feels left out." I stared at her. The lie was so easy for her, as if she'd been rehearsing it all her life. "She always wants the spotlight," someone whispered behind me. "I heard she tried to crash the rehearsal dinner," another added. Poor Elowen. So stressed, so brave. And me? I'd been cast. The unstable one, the jealous sister, the destroyer of peace. I looked at Callan. "Did you really tell them I ruin everything?" I asked. "Is that what you think of me?" He avoided my gaze. "It's not the time for this." "For you, it never is." He blinked. That hit him, but not enough to make him speak. I turned, ready to walk out, not for them, for myself, but before I could move more than a step, one of the cousins bumped into me hard enough to jolt me sideways. It wasn't an accident. He leaned in and muttered, "Just go. No one wants you here." A few gasps echoed in the room. Some turned away, some watched even closer. Callan didn't move, Elowen didn't blink. Varel looked at the floor, as if silence equaled innocence. That was the moment something inside me shifted. They expected me to cry. They expected me to bolt from the room in tears, holding back sobs like the unstable woman they've painted me to be. But I didn't. I straightened my spine, and I stepped forward. Not fast, not loud, but different. "I spent most of my life believing silence kept the peace," I said, my voice steady. "But peace built on silence. That's just surrender with better lighting." A few people blinked. I wasn't yelling. I wasn't trembling. But they could feel it. "If you push me again," I said slowly, my eyes on the cousin who'd shoved me, "you'll regret it." My voice was calm, even, almost cold. And yet, the room shifted. A ripple of discomfort passed through the crowd, like something had cracked the surface. Elowen crossed her arms and scoffed. "Oh, please! What could you possibly do?" I looked at her, really looked at her, and smiled. Not fake, not bitter, just knowing. They had no idea what I was capable of, because they'd spent their entire lives pretending I didn't exist. But I was done disappearing. I walked away before they could speak again. and that small act of control terrified them far more than any argument ever could. The cool night air hit me the moment I pushed open the side door into the small courtyard off the lobby. It should have felt like relief, but it didn't. Not when I could still hear the muffled hum of voices inside, the clinking of glasses and fork taps against plates. Celebration echoed behind me while I stood outside like an uninvited ghost. I let out a breath, eyes fixed on the pavement, until a soft shuffle behind me made me turn. 2 uniformed security guards were walking directly toward me. One of them tapped his earpiece, his expression unreadable. "Ma'am," he said, stopping a few feet away, "we need a word." My stomach turned, not from fear, not exactly, from recognition. "What's going on?" I asked, steady but wary. The second guard glanced toward the door behind them, where a few guests had turned their heads. "It's just a quick check-in," he said. "Someone raised a concern." My spine stiffened. "A concern?" He nodded, lifting a small tablet. "We were informed that you made a threat toward another guest." The words hit harder than I expected. "That's not true," I said instantly, stepping forward. "I haven't touched anyone. I haven't even spoken to half the people in that room." He read again from the screen. The guest in question reportedly stated she would cause a scene and was not afraid to lash out. Those exact words, scripted, planted. I could practically hear Eloan rehearsing them, lips curling in practiced innocence. "This is a mistake," I said. "I haven't done anything wrong." "We just need to speak in private," the first guard replied, voice calm, professional. "Won't take long." Their tone wasn't aggressive. That almost made it worse. This wasn't chaos. It was procedure. They'd made me into a problem, and now protocol was being followed. They led me down a short hallway, just off the main lobby, toward a small office that looked more like a coat check room than anything else. Clean, quiet, windowless. Inside, a manager stood waiting. He looked at me like he'd already made up his mind. "We've received what appears to be a screenshot of a message, ma'am," he said, holding up a phone. "From someone listed in the wedding party." He turned the screen toward me. It was a text chain. At the top, my name. Below it, a message bubble in gray. "You'll regret pushing me. I'm not afraid to make a scene." I blinked. Once, twice. It was surreal. Seeing a lie dressed up in my name, my words, like a costume I didn't remember wearing. "That's not me," I said, voice low. "That's not my number. That's not a real message." The room stayed silent. Anyone could create a fake screenshot. Look up how easy it is. The manager raised an eyebrow. "We're obligated to follow up on reports of threats." "I understand that," I said, trying to keep my voice calm. "But this isn't real. It's fabricated." He didn't respond. Then the door opened again. Callan walked in. My breath caught before I could stop it. His expression, not furious, not shocked, just tired, worn down, like he'd finally gotten confirmation of something he never wanted to be true. He looked at the phone in the manager's hand, then at me. "Morris." His voice dropped with something like grief. "Why would you send something like that?" "I didn't." I shook my head, blinking hard. "You know me. You've known me your whole life." He ran a hand across his jaw. "Eloan's family warned me. They said you were trying to ruin things. I told them they were being paranoid, but now security's involved." I felt something shatter behind my ribs. He trusted a screenshot more than he trusted me. "Do you hear yourself?" I asked, trying not to choke. "You're trusting people who've known me for 5 minutes over your own sister." "I'm exhausted, Maris," he muttered. "I just want the wedding to go smoothly." "At what cost?" I asked. "Throwing me out? Smearing me? Is that what you call smooth?" The room was too quiet. I took a breath, and another. Then I straightened my spine. "Look up the metadata," I said to the manager. "Trace the number, call the phone company, verify the message timestamp. You'll find it's not mine." The manager looked surprised, not by the request, by how calm I was. Callan stared at me. He hadn't expected me to be rational. He hadn't expected me to fight fair. The door creaked open again, and Elowen appeared in the doorway. Her face was a masterclass in faux concern. "Oh, goodness," she said, clasping her hands, eyes wide. "Is everything all right in here?" The manager stepped forward. "Just clarifying some things." "I hope Maris isn't in any trouble," she said sweetly. "I told Callan I just wanted everyone to feel safe. That's all." She looked at me as she said it, that soft smile dripping with control. I recognized the move. This wasn't new. I'd lived this choreography since childhood. People shaping how others saw me before I ever spoke a word. But now I wasn't 10, and I wasn't silent. I turned to Callan. "I need you to hear me," I said, my voice soft but solid. "What you're doing right now, you won't be able to take back." He didn't speak, but he looked uneasy for the first time. I turned to the manager. "I'd like to make a statement. I want it on record." He nodded slowly. "Of course." And that's when I knew. They weren't afraid of what I might say. They were afraid of what I might prove. They built an entire illusion around the idea that I'd stay quiet, that I'd crack, that I'd give them permission to destroy me by standing down. But that version of me no longer existed. Before I could finish giving my statement, the door opened again, this time with someone rushing in, out of breath, panic on their face. And with just one sentence, everything began to unravel. The assistant stood in the doorway, out of breath, gripping a tablet like it might explode. Her eyes darted from me to the manager, then to Callan and back again. "There's something you need to see," she said quietly, almost apologetically. The temperature in the room dropped. Even Callan went still. We followed her down a narrow hallway to a small surveillance office tucked behind the lobby, a space I didn't even know existed. The room buzzed with quiet electronics and the glow of monitors. No one spoke. The only sound was the assistant's fingers tapping the screen. "Here," she said. The footage played on a large monitor. I saw myself in the lobby, earlier that evening, walking calmly, alone. No raised voice, no confrontation, no wild expression. Just me, moving quietly, waiting. Sitting with my hands folded, completely still. The angle switched. This time it showed Elowen's cousin, the same one who'd whispered that I was unpredictable, glancing around and pulling out her phone. Her fingers moved fast. She looked up, checked her surroundings, and smirked. The assistant paused the video, zooming in. There it was. The same pink glitter phone case from the forged message. A security guard behind me muttered under his breath, "That's not good." The manager crossed his arms, exhaling hard. Callan stared at the screen, face ashen, jaw slack. His arms slowly dropped to his sides. He didn't say a word. He didn't have to. The footage did it for him. I didn't flinch. I didn't speak. I let the silence hold the truth. The assistant tapped again, switching to the metadata window. "The message was created on this device," she explained, pointing to the identifier at the top. "Not Maris's. And it was composed and sent 4 minutes before it was reported to security." I stepped closer, speaking low and even. "So the threat came from inside the wedding party?" She nodded, glancing at the manager. "Not just that. It was crafted to look like it came from her. That's impersonation." Callan finally found his voice. Why would they do that?" I looked at him. No heat, no anger, just tired truth. "You've been asking the wrong question your entire life," I said. "Not why would they do it, But why do you believe them so easily? He swallowed. No answer. The assistant kept going, almost with a sense of duty now. She brought up more footage, this time from earlier in the day. Elowen at the venue entrance, leaning in close to a guard, whispering while pointing discreetly toward me. Another clip, her mother giving a silent thumbs up to someone just after the forged message was sent. Then, the kicker, Elowen's cousin laughing with a bridesmaid, holding her phone, saying, "She won't know what hit her." The manager took a step back. "That's enough," he said, turning to the guards. "We'll be filing a formal report." "Should we start taking statements now?" one of them asked. Callan pressed his palms to his face. "Oh my God, Elowen!" He looked like someone just pulled the floor out from beneath him. I let the moment sit, let it sting, let him feel for once the weight of his silence. Then I stepped forward, voice low and even. "I told you the truth," I said. Callan looked up, eyes red. "I didn't know." "That's the problem," I cut in. "You never know, because you never look. You let them tell you who I am, so you don't have to do the work yourself." His mouth opened slightly, like he had something to say, then closed again. He had nothing, not that it mattered anymore. A beat passed. Then the manager motioned to the guards. "Let's go," he said. We left the surveillance room as a group, the assistant, the manager, Callan, 2 guards, and me. Down the hallway, toward the main area of the venue. I could hear laughter spilling from the rehearsal dinner, clinking glasses and polite applause. But that would change. As we rounded the corner, I saw them, Elowen and her family, standing by the reception setup, talking like they hadn't just tried to erase a person from the narrative of her own life. The manager cleared his throat sharply. "We need to speak to all of you." Elowen turned, smiling, casual. But the smile froze when she saw who stood behind him. Her expression cracked, just barely. "What's going on?" she asked, feigning confusion. I didn't speak. I didn't need to. The manager lifted the tablet and pressed play. The footage played on speaker. The hallway fell silent. A bridesmaid gasped. Someone muttered, "Oh my God!" Elowen's mother stepped forward, panic creeping into her voice. "This is taken out of context." "No," the manager said, his voice steely. "It's not." Elowen's cousin took a small step back. Her hands trembled. I didn't mean..." I finally spoke. "You framed me, and you almost had security escort me out of a venue I own." Gasps this time, audible, real. Now they knew. I wasn't just the problem, I was the property holder. The weight of that truth dropped like a brick. Every smug look, every dismissive shrug, recontextualized, and none of them saw it coming. Callan turned to Elowen, face pale. "Elowen, tell me you didn't know." She blinked. I just wanted everything to go smoothly. That's all." Smooth. They always hide cruelty under that word. Callan's voice broke. "You humiliated my sister. You lied. Your family set her up." Elowen stepped toward him, hand reaching. He stepped back. The distance said it all. People stared. No one moved. And me? I breathed. A long, slow breath. The air felt different now. I looked at Elowen's mother, her aunt, her niece, every one of them standing in their own shame, watching the illusion crumble. "You didn't do this to me," I said calmly. "You did it to yourselves." The truth of it landed harder than any shout could have. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. Staff began drifting toward my side, not because I asked, but because the truth has gravity, and it pulls. And that's when Elowen snapped. She let out this guttural, desperate sound, half sob, half snarl, and lunged at me, grabbing my arm with both hands. Her nails dug in hard enough to leave a mark. "You ruined everything," she screamed, her voice cracking. The hallway exploded into gasps. Chairs scraped, glass clinked somewhere. Phones came up like reflexes, people recording before their brains even caught up. Her father reached to pull her back, but she jerked away. Her eyes were wild, mascara smudged down one cheek. "Everyone always bends for you," she shrieked. "You're nothing! Nothing!" And just like that, the Eloan they'd all believed in, the polished fiancé, the sweet host, the golden girl, shattered in full view of the people she'd spent years charming. 2 security guards were on her in seconds, calm but firm. "Ma'am, step away from her," one said. "She's the one ruining my wedding," she shrieked again, trying to twist free. "She assaulted Miss Dane," the guard said to the crowd, "who, for the record, owns this venue." There was a beat of total silence. "She owns it?" someone whispered, just loud enough. A different voice followed. "Oh, this changes everything." I didn't respond. I didn't move. I just let them see it. The truth of who I was, who I had always been. The rehearsal dinner doors swung open, and guests spilled out. The noise had drawn them. The screams, the chaos. Faces turned, eyes wide, phones raised, some stunned into stillness. Eloan's mother reached out to shield her daughter, but it was too late. Eloan couldn't be shielded from herself. "She acts like she's so innocent," she was yelling now, "but she's manipulative. She twists everything." A bridesmaid near her turned, looked directly at her, and said, quietly but clearly, "No, that's you." Eloan froze. Right then, her last ounce of control slipped. Her cousin, the one who sent the fake message, burst into tears. "I didn't mean to hurt her," she sobbed. "Eloan told me to. She said it was just to keep things peaceful." Gasps rolled through the crowd like wind. The manager stepped forward, holding 2 crisp printed reports in his hand. "We're initiating an internal investigation," he said, his voice steady but loud enough to carry. One of the security guards added, "We're also required to document both physical assault and digital impersonation. This may be escalated to local law enforcement." Eloan's father paled. We can fix this quietly. There's no need to bring in—" "Sir," the guard interrupted, "this isn't up for negotiation." Eloan dropped onto a nearby chair like someone had unplugged her. Her hands trembled in her lap. Her dress, once elegant, now looked like it belonged to someone else. Callan stood at the edge of the circle forming around me, around the truth. He looked lost, older than I remembered. His eyes were rimmed red. He walked to me slowly. "I should have protected you," he said, voice gravelly. "I should have trusted you. I'm sorry, Maris." I looked at him, really looked. The boy who used to bring me popsicles when I cried. The man who had let other people tell him who I was. "You could have just asked me," I said. "That's all you ever had to do." He nodded. Tears welled and spilled without resistance. "What are you going to do now?" I asked quietly. He turned to Eloan. "Eloan, the wedding's off." The hallway froze. Even the air felt suspended. Her head whipped up. "You can't do this to me." "No," he said. "You did this to yourself." It didn't feel good to hear it. It didn't feel triumphant. It felt necessary. That's when Eloan's mother stepped forward again. But this time, she didn't plead. She knelt. She got down on her knees in front of me. "Please," she whispered. "Please don't press charges. Please don't destroy our family. We were wrong. We were terribly wrong." Her father followed. On both knees now, hands clasped. "We're begging you," he said. "Please, Maris." A hush fell. The kind of silence you can feel in your chest. Guests watched, unsure where to look. A few whispered. "She warned them. They pushed the wrong woman. She deserves this." I didn't feel powerful. I felt clear. I crouched slightly, not to level myself with them, but to be sure they heard me. "I don't need to ruin your family," I said. "You did that yourselves." They broke down, shoulders shaking, faces crumpled. "I won't press charges," I continued, "but you will write apologies. One to the staff, one to security, one to me." They nodded desperately, clinging to that sliver of escape. "And you will leave this venue," I added. "Now." The hallway held its breath. Elowen's family rose slowly, like people walking out of a funeral. And maybe they were, the funeral of their own illusion. They walked away without another word. Heads down, no longer the hosts, no longer in charge. Just people who got caught. The guests began to scatter. Some gave me long looks, some with sympathy, some with shame. A few smiled at me gently, respectfully. Others just walked, unsure what to do next with the weight of what they'd seen. Callan approached again, hesitant. "Maris," he said, voice quieter now. "I know I've let you down more than once. I don't expect you to forgive me, but I want to try to rebuild, if you'll let me." I looked at him. "Not today," I said. He nodded. "Someday? Maybe." That was all I had to give him, and he knew it. I turned and stepped outside. The night had cooled, the sky dark but clear. The city lights blinked in the distance, reflecting off the tall windows. I stood for a moment, listening to nothing but my own breath. The sound of my heels on the pavement felt sharp and final. And as I walked toward my car, one thought carried me forward. I didn't need their approval anymore. I had finally learned what real freedom felt like.